tomorrow we get right back at it. So there are 4 games on tomorrow. I decided I'll go with some big logos and have fun with it, and then some news of the day along the bottom. If you're a Vegas fan, Pacioretty is going to play in Game 1. We kind of suspected that was going to happen anyways. So, yeah, we'll just go ahead and start right off, which means I got to get my pen with my Kirkland's Meeseeks and my little notebook here. And off we go. So, Chicago against Vegas, this one starts at 7:30 Pacific. This is actually going to be the last game. Keep in mind that when games go to overtime, the earlier games, is going to push the other games back. We saw that very, very little in the play-ins. The only game that really got delayed was Vancouver and Minnesota, and it was a brief delay, but it pushed things back 15 minutes. I think it pushed back Calgary and Winnipeg as well. So the 7:30 Pacific start time is dependent on some things, but I don't see necessarily that with 5 hours between start times here that there should be a problem. Shouldn't be. We could have overlap, but there shouldn't be a problem. But again, we don't know. We could end up with triple overtime, quadruple overtime. Chicago comes in, no pressure, not a lot of expectation. The channel seems to be voting in favor of Vegas winning this round, which is understandable. The odds that came out today are that Vegas and Colorado are the favorites. So we'll see how that goes. And usually the team that's the favorite on the betting line is usually out early. But again, Chicago really shouldn't sneak up on Las Vegas if they did their homework, and I'm sure they did. They know that the Chicago Blackhawks are in this to win it, and likely are looking at this as, hey, this is a chance for maybe one last run with Crawford and Net and Keith on the blue line, and they'll want to make Vegas their next victim after what they did to the Oilers. For Vegas, it's about asserting yourself early, get that early goal. Edmonton was able to do that 3 times in that series. The problem was Edmonton didn't follow it up. Vegas will. So if Chicago allows that first goal against Vegas, this one could end up potentially being ugly. But again, Chicago surprised me in round 1. I don't know if they surprised you. You can let me know what you think in the comment section, but they surprised me. And we'll see if they can surprise me again in this round against the Vegas Golden Knights. Next up, Calgary against the Dallas Stars. Dallas has last change. This one starts at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, which is 5:30 Eastern. This, of course, is 10:30 Eastern. Again, there's 5 hours between the start times in the Western games. I don't think that's going to cause a problem. For Dallas, of course, goal scoring's been the problem, and they need to get that straightened out. If they don't, this could be a very quick round. I like Calgary. I like what they've done so far. While I may have been cheering for Winnipeg in the last round, it was impressive to watch what Calgary did. And winning that series in 4 with not a lot of pain on their side. They certainly inflicted it on the Jets, but not so much on their side. We do hear that Tyler Seguin's going to be playing. Ben Bishop should be able to play. This whole unfit to play thing really throws a monkey wrench in, doesn't it? So they won't even say, like, oh, it's a maintenance day or he's got the night off or anything. It's just unfit to play. It immediately then, of course, we think, oh, did somebody test positive? And that's the first thought. But the NHL sticking with this unfit to play, and so far so good for them inside this bubble. Dallas really needs to come out and show in Game 1 that they're able to score goals. This is a problem. They had the 1 goal against St. Louis, and then, of course, they win that in the shootout. They had 3 goals in 4 minutes and 52 seconds against Vegas, and then nothing else the rest of the time. They need to show they can score. Jamie Benn needs to pick it up. Radulov needs to pick it up, and they need a healthy Tyler Seguin. They need the Tyler Seguin that signed that contract that looked like a huge bargain at the time he signed it. And this year's been a rough year for the best players for Dallas. I love Rope Hintz, but if you're counting on him to be your goal scorer, you're probably not lasting more than round 1. So Calgary's going to be looking to steal one right away. Put the pressure on. I would look for a lot of hitting. I would look for Kachuk to be very involved right away. And watch Talbot. If Talbot gets off to a good start in this series, that's really an interesting wrinkle that I don't think we saw. We could understand Riddick potentially being the backup, but I didn't see Talbot being as good as he was against Winnipeg, and we'll see if he can keep that up against Dallas. Next up, the one that I think a lot of people are going to expect that upset, and according to the vote, as much as Calgary's expected to score what would be a mild upset over Dallas, the Tampa Bay-Columbus matchup is seen as a bad matchup for Tampa. So this one starts at 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern, and for those of you in Europe, that's an early-ish game, and that you can probably watch it before it's too late at night for you. It's 8 o'clock Europe, 8, 9 o'clock, somewhere around there. Anyways, it should be an entertaining matchup. I do expect to see another great game from Korpisalo, of course. Merzlikins won't be back for a while. He's out indefinitely. I thought it was interesting, too, that John Tortorella is defending Sheldon Keefe. And as much as now Toronto media has just turned on everything and turned on the team based on what happened in Game 5, Sheldon Keefe being defended, and rightfully so. It's your first year behind the bench. It wasn't even a full season, and you're trying to make best with what you have, and I don't think the coach is the problem. So it's a good thing that Tortorella defended Sheldon Keefe and his staff. And now he needs to go in and see if he can get a coach fired in Tampa. Because I really think if Tampa doesn't win this matchup with Columbus, I don't see John Cooper being kept around by the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't see him being able to keep his job. Despite all the regular season accolades, without a postseason run over the last couple of years, that probably does it for him. So we'll see. A big part of the problem they had last year was it didn't feel like they took things seriously until Game 4. We need to see them right out of the gate in Game 1, taking it seriously. Now, the big question mark, not just the fact that Merzlikins is out indefinitely for Columbus, but so how about Hedman? How about Stamkos? Who might play? What kind of shape are they going to be in? And are they going to be able to withstand the four lines for Columbus that now, with the addition of Foudy, it feels like they're a little more dangerous than they were coming into this tournament. And yeah, we'll see how things go for them in round 1. Because again, the expectation is that Columbus is probably going to do some damage in this. And the last game we're going to preview is Carolina and Boston, 5 p.m. Pacific, which is 8 o'clock Eastern. So you're going this one, this one, this one, and this one. So again, you're always going to have your Eastern, Western, Eastern, Western throughout the playoffs. It'll be 4 per day through a majority of the first round. The official first round after the play-ins, right? And then it'll drop down to 1 in each hub once we get to the next round, and it gets a lot easier. So I am looking forward to having a bit of an easier week for me, in that rather than having to worry about 6 games a day, it'll be down to 4. And by this time next week, it'll probably be down to 3 or 2, because not every series is going to go to 7. And the expectation between Carolina and Boston is now that Carolina probably wins this. I don't know if Carolina necessarily does, but I do like the way their team looked against the New York Rangers. Ranger fans, of course, now have to thank the Carolina Hurricanes for that, as they've won. They won the number 1 draft pick. That's right here. Lafreniere is going to be a member of the New York Rangers. So I'm doing this a little different than your normal news of the day, in that if it matches into what I'm talking about here, I'm going to go ahead and mention it while I'm talking, which is Carolina helping the Rangers get the number 1 pick. Not an intentional thing to help a division rival get the number 1 draft pick, but it'll be interesting to see what that does for the Rangers. The Boston Bruins, they have to come out early. They have to show that they're focused. They did not look focused during that round robin. They just didn't. Tuukka Rask said it knocked the rust off. Of course, Rask, unfit to play, wasn't at practice today. And Pastrnak, unfit to play, wasn't at practice today. This is the stuff that kind of makes me very concerned. And again, there were 0 tests this week. None. 0 positive tests, I should say, not 0 tests overall. 0 positive tests from within the bubble. So even for those who say, well, the tests aren't all that accurate, there were none. There were no positive tests. So things are pretty safe thus far, and now we've got 8 less teams in the bubble to worry about. And about a week and a half from now, we'll have 8 less than that, and then it's 4 less, and then there's 4 teams in one bubble, and that's way easier for the NHL to manage at that stage. Boston needs to come out. Rask needs to be Rask, and that first line needs to get it together. That first line looked terrible yesterday. For the Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak line to look that bad, I honestly it was shocking. So Boston has to pick it up right away, or else, Carolina can absolutely knock them off. So along the bottom here, we got 0 positive tests in week 2. So for people who jump ahead to that timestamp, 0 positive tests in week 2. We're still at 0 over 18,000 tests administered. No positives back. Again, as long as the players are taking it seriously, they're observing all of the safety precautions, we're good. And hopefully it stays that way throughout until October. And again, I think we'll see some modified version of this when we get to the next regular season. They'll have a next regular season. Because, again, we don't know the timeline for things like vaccines and treatments and all this. So you've kind of got to, if you are a business during this time, you have to figure out a way to exist, or you're not going to be a business for very long. And professional sports are not immune from that. So when I hear people saying things like, well, yeah, the NHL will just, stop playing for about a year and we'll lose 8 or 9 teams. Yeah, players don't want that and owners don't want that either. So they're going to do everything they can to prevent that from happening. I think the new collective bargaining agreement, the extension that they signed, great start. Great start. So yeah, Alexis Lafreniere is going to be a member of the New York Rangers. This beefs up their top 6. On the board there, I've got Panarin, Zibanejad, Kakko, Lafreniere, Kreider, Strome. That could be your top 6. Kravtsov could get in there. And again, for the New York Rangers, it's insane that they've added Kakko 1 year and now they're going to add Lafreniere. Just their wings just got that much better. And they already had Zibanejad down the middle. So Bika's going to have a pretty good winger. I look forward to seeing Zibanejad and Lafreniere together on any level. Lafreniere may very well be a great passing player. Zibanejad, of course, we know he's a great goal scorer. Might be interesting to see how that goes. So the New York Rangers, good news today after a miserable week last week. As I mentioned earlier, Merzlikins out indefinitely. Torts doesn't think he probably comes back to play in the first round. But Tortorella is capable of figuring all this out, and he's got Korpisalo. That's where it helps having 2 starters. And he did defend Sheldon Keefe. So the Toronto media, some Toronto fans, I actually, you know what? I'm going to back up on that. I haven't seen Toronto fans blame Keefe at all. But media questioning his choice of line combinations and things going on with Toronto, I've seen that. I also saw an article talking about how the Leafs are built for all offense, and how dangerous they were during the regular season. And I'm not sure what they're talking about. The Leafs had a good start, and then they were just kind of mediocre after that. And sure, they've got big name star players, but they couldn't score against Carolina. Their defense wasn't actually bad. Their goaltending was pretty good. The numbers for Freddie Anderson were pretty good. They just didn't score. So I think the idea that they need to just get defense and stop being all offensive, I think that's too simplistic. I think there are some real issues with the way Toronto's put together. And basically Tortorella defending Keefe is his way of saying, look, it's not the coach. And, Mike Babcock, when he left, they had that bump under Keefe. But a lot of teams will. That when a coach comes in and takes over, a team will get a bit of a bump. Doesn't necessarily mean the guy that got fired was a bad coach. Just that the team's like, we got rid of him. Cool. And, we'll go out there and win. And then all of a sudden it doesn't work out so well for them. Toronto got into a lot of bad habits again. Toronto fixed themselves under Keefe that first few weeks. And then they started slowly sliding back into bad habits. And I'm sure somewhere Mike Babcock is nodding his head and saying, this is kind of where I could have predicted it was going. Does Babcock have certain issues himself? Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying Babcock is the greatest coach ever, but it's really easy to point the finger at the coach when you can't necessarily trade the players. So kudos to Tortorella for coming to the defense of another coach in the NHL, because Tortorella knows how that works. Tortorella is well aware of how quickly things can turn, and he probably remembers his time in Vancouver and how he didn't fit the team and the team didn't fit him. And that was before he went to Columbus, and now he's been Columbus's coach for a while. So he's a guy that when he talks, I definitely listen to him. Speaking of listening, Florida and Dale Talon have decided they've listened to each other enough, and they reached the decision to mutually part ways. So according to them, it's a mutual breakup. Talon's out as GM. I'm not sure who you bring in if you're Florida. I'm a big fan of promoting from within. I don't know that they necessarily do that, but I'm a fan of promoting from within. and finding a way to make sure that works for you. But Florida's made the decision to make that move, and it's not the first time. And the last time they moved on from Talon was when they promoted him and brought in Tom Rowe, which really didn't work. But Talon's had enough time with this team that I understand Florida's perspective of moving on. I understand him wanting to move on as well. And I think for Florida, it's another year of dysfunction. A team that clearly is not good enough, even though now they're spending a ton of money to not be good enough. You can be not good enough without spending money, but now they're spending a ton. And so ownership wants some more results out of them. Jacob Voracek is a game-time decision for the Philadelphia Flyers on Wednesday. When they open their series against Montreal, if Voracek's out, that's going to be a huge deal. I haven't seen anything yet on Lindblom. That would be a huge deal if he's in their lineup. And for the Flyers, Claude Julien's already pumping their tires, saying he sees them as the best team in the East. And when I see a coach talking like that, on one hand, I think, well, that's nice that he's being honest about it. And on another hand, I think, yeah, but is he just saying that as like some kind of a ploy? Is this sort of a start of a tit for tat they're going to have going on? You never know. So yeah, Voracek's a game time decision. Philadelphia is kind of expected to be the best in the East, and we'll see how that works out for them. Buffalo making news tomorrow. Tomorrow they reveal their brand new jerseys, which are supposed to be their old jerseys. They're supposed to go back to the old color scheme they had back in the day. And just on a side note, if they could take the numbers off the front of those jerseys, I think that'd be great. I don't see the need of a number on the front of a jersey. I never have. Most jerseys don't do that. So I know when Buffalo started doing it, I thought, oh, I hope that doesn't become a thing. And I still do. I don't think you need it. You've got it on the arm. You've got it on the back. You don't need it on the front. And I stand by that. Yeah, Buffalo going back to their old colors. I think that's a simple choice. People will definitely buy that jersey. And for Buffalo, they also need to get back to the team they were when they wore that jersey in, say, I don't know, the 80s? When they were pretty darn good for most of the 80s, or during the late 70s, mid 70s, when they were one of the best teams in the league. It's a small thing that Buffalo's doing and going back to their old colors, and it's something that was rumored as long as at least a year ago. So that finally happens tomorrow. Act surprised when it's the old colors. Act surprised. But yeah, that's the plan there, and that's about it for the news of the day for right now. We'll see what else goes on, and again, as we get further into the playoffs, I'll be able to do more news videos, and then more of the other fun stuff too, which like the career videos, more of the draft videos. I've still got more draft prospects I haven't touched yet, I haven't talked about. So more of that on the way. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks to all the new subscribers. The channel's picked up approximately 7,000 in the last month, so thank you guys for subscribing if you have. And hey, we'll see how this shakes out and who ends up winning the Stanley Cup. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Do hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I will talk to you again soon.